Hello, welcome to the night class. Today we are going over the Algebra 1 Chapter 9 review. I'm Coach Knight. Chapter 9 review is basically solving quadratics and the different ways you can do that. So let's get right to it. 1 and 2 says solve the equation using the zero product property. That's pretty simple. All that means is you take their factors, and since you're multiplying these two factors, one of them has to be 0. We don't know which one, so we set both of them equal to 0. So 5x minus 10 equals 0, and 4x plus 8 equals 0. And you solve both of them. So add 10 to both sides for this first one. You'll end up with 5x equals 10. Divide by 5. X equals 2. And then you do the same thing for the other side. Subtract 8 from both sides. You'll get 4x equals negative 8. Divide by 4. X equals negative 2. All there is to those. Okay, number 2 is the same thing. Set your factors equal to 0 and solve. So 7n equals 0, 2n plus 4 equals 0. So divide by 7, divide by 7. N will equal 0. Here we got a little more work to do. Subtract 4 from both sides. We get 2n equals negative 4. Divide by 2. N equals negative 2. So n equals 0 and n equals 2. 3, 4, 5, and 6. It says, what are the solutions of the equation? Notice the directions does not say how to solve it. So it is up to you. If you want to solve it using your calculator, you can. If you don't, if you want to do it doing the quadratic formula, that's okay too. If you want to do it factoring, that's okay. It does not matter on this section how you solve it. So I am going to do, for this one, I'm just going to do, it looks like it could be factorable. So I'm going to factor this one. So I'm going to say x squared minus 4x. And if I'm going to factor it, I need that negative, that 12 on the other side. So I'm going to move it to the other side. And again, what am I doing there? I'm subtracting 12 from both sides. Okay? So that's how I'm doing that. And then I'm going to factor. That'll be x and x equals 0. And I figure out what two numbers multiply to be negative 12 and add up to negative 4. That's negative 6 and positive 2. And then I set both of those equal to 0, and I work it just like I did 1 and 2. Excuse me. So add 6 to both sides. You're going to get x equals 6. Here I would subtract 2 from both sides, and I get negative 2. Easy as that. Okay. Number 4. 4 I can graph. However, I can factor. I can do whatever I want to on this one. You can factor it, and factoring it's not that hard. However, I would have to borrow on this one. Therefore, I am going to graph it. I need to show y'all, make sure you know how to do it. So let me go to my calculator, type in 20x squared minus, make sure I remember what it was. It's minus 29x plus 5. So minus 29x plus 5, and I hit graph. And remember, you are just looking for where it crosses the x-axis. So to do that, you can hit second trace, and I want the 0, which is number 2. And I have to do this twice. I'm going to find the left bound of the graph. Right now, it is way up at 300 and something. It's coming down. Here we go. There it is. Okay. So left of the 0 on the left would be about right there. Enter. Hit right. Enter. And my 0 is 0.2. So 0.2 is the same as 1/5. So however you want to write it, that's my answer. So we got x equals 0.2 or 1/5. but we also have one more. Don't forget about the other one. I have to do the same thing. Second trace number 2. Oops. I'm going to, I think I hit it one too many. Second trace 2. There we go. I'm moving it to the left of the point on the right. That's 0. Enter. Then move it to the right. Enter. You have to hit enter one more time. I don't though. So this one, x is basically 1.25. So 1.25. And if you wanted to know 1.25, I believe that's 5/4. So yes, x equals 5/4. And since the directions did not say how they wanted you to round it, I would take either of those answers. I will take directions that do not say to round or anything like that. So I would take the fraction or the decimal, either one. All right, number 5 is, it's set up to do, that's an easy factoring one there. So I'm just going to factor this one. You can put it in your calculator if you want to. Two numbers that multiply to be -35 and add up to -2 would be -7 and +5. So once I set both of those equal to 0, once you do this a while, you can skip this step because you just know the answers will be the opposite of what they are. So z equals 7 and z equals -5. Okay. Number 6, again, if I wanted to factor, I could. It would require borrowing or grouping, depending on if you're a borrower or a grouper. But when it's like this, I think I'm just going to use my calculator one more time. Saves a little time. So this time, let's see here, 3, -10, and -25. So go to y equals. We have 3x squared minus 10x minus 25. Oops. Let's try this again. There we go. 25. Hit graph. There are the answers. So I hit second trace. Number 2. Go left of the 0. That'll work. Enter. Go right of the 0. I only have to hit enter once. You have to hit enter twice. Okay. It says my x is -1.66666666. So -1.666 repeating. I don't want you to leave it like that. Let's figure out what is 1.666 repeating. You can stick that in your calculator and just hit math, enter, enter. It is 5/3. So x equals -5/3. And for the other one, let's see here, second trace, number 2. Move my cursor over to the right one. I'm still going left. Here it comes. There it is. So enter, the right bound, enter, and this one is 5. So x equals 5. Anytime my a is not 1, I'm probably not factoring it. You can factor it. You can, but it's probably not the easiest way. I'm probably going to do that one completing the quadratic formula or graphing it if I can. All right. Number 7. Tasha is planning an expansion of a square, that's an important word, a square flower garden in the city park. If each side of the original garden is increased by 5 meters, the new total area of the garden will be 196 square meters. Find the length of each side of the original garden. So the original garden, I'll just kind of draw it right here. It said it was a little square garden. It had X for the sides, and the new garden is going to add 5 meters to both sides. So that's now going to be X plus 5 and X plus 5. And it says find the length of each side of the original garden. So basically we're just finding X here, okay? So if I were to find the area of the bigger square, I'm just going to say X plus 5 times X plus 5, which would be X plus 5 squared. That's what I have written down here already, okay? And it equals 196. They told us what the area was. And so I just solved that for X. So to get rid of that square, I'm going to take the square root. That will be X plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 196. So square root of 196 is 14. I subtract 5 over and get your two answers again. So 14 minus 5 is 9. And negative 14 minus 5 is negative 19. Now, think about it. We're talking about the side length of a square, of a garden. It's not going to be negative 19, okay? It has to be 9, and of course that was meters because it was measuring in meters. So 9 meters is the length of our side of the original square, the original garden, okay? Number 8 says the area of a playground is 315 yards. So they give us the area, it's 315 square yards. It says the width is 6 longer than the length. Find the length and width of the playground. So if you have a playground, I'll just draw it right here. Okay. You have your width, and it says, you have your width, and the length, and it says your width is, so you put width, W is 6 yards longer than the length. So that means it's L plus 6. Okay. And basically you find the area of that rectangle. And area is just length times width. So area will be length times, and we're going to, instead of putting W, we're going to put what W is. W is L plus 6. And oops, I forgot to replace the A. What was the area? It said the area is 315. So 315 I put in for area, and I work it out. So that'll be 315 equals L squared plus 6L, if I distributed that L, okay? I'm going to subtract the 315 over to both sides. Those will cancel, and I'm left with 0 equals, and I can factor this length and length, or you can do the quadratic formula, or you can do completing the square, or you can do factoring. So, or you can graph it. It does not matter. It doesn't say what to do, so we can do anything. I'm going to factor it because that tends to be a little quicker. We just got to figure out what are the factors of 315 that add up to 6. So let me just try 15. Oh, I was lucky. 15 and 21. So this would be a positive 21 and a negative 15. So notice 21 times negative 15 is negative 315, and 21 plus negative 15 is 6. So that's how we got those. So my length would be negative 21, or my length could be positive 15. And of course this was measured in yards. So negative 21 yards doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to scratch that one out. The width, if you don't remember, width was equal to the length plus 6. So the length is 15 plus 6. The width would be 21 yards. So there's your length, and there is your width. Length is 15 yards, width is 21 yards. All right. Number 9 says, what is the factored form of this function? So this is the factored form of a quadratic right here. So you need to make sure you know that. And basically they give us 3 points here that we're going to use. P and Q are your x-intercepts. Okay, that's where it's crossing the x-axis. And then it gives us a point. Now you don't have to use the point I'm using, but it's the vertex, so why not use it? Okay, so I'm going to plug in everything I know. Let's figure out what is this point. This point would be negative 2, negative 2. This answer is negative 1, and this one is negative 3. So I'm plugging this in here. We'll let this one be P, we'll let that one be Q, and this is X and Y. And you plug them in and figure out what A is. Okay, so Y is negative 2 equals A. X is negative 2 minus P. I'll let it be negative 1 times X again is negative 2 minus Q. This time is negative 3. I put all that knowledge, I calculate it here in two negatives, make a positive. So negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. Here, two negatives make a positive again. Negative 2 plus 3 is positive 1. So that would be negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Divide both sides by negative 1. And we get A is 2. And then it's just a matter of plugging it back in. So every time you write an equation, your y and x stay y and x. You don't plug in when you're writing the equation or the factored form. You don't want a number for x and y. You want them to stay x and y. So I do need to plug in A. It's 2. X plus 1 times x plus 3. Because remember, you're going to do the opposites of your roots, or the zeros. Those are your factors. So, bada boom, bada bing. That's number 9. Okay? Alright, number 10 says solve the equation using square roots. So, that just basically means we work at doing regular algebra. Work these out using our square roots. So we're going to subtract 21 from both sides. 3x squared equals, that would be 48. Divide by 3. X squared is 16. Take the square root. Very important. Don't forget it is positive or negative 4. It's the square root of 16. Done. Number 11, same process. Add 16 to both sides. 4x squared equals 16. Divide by 4. X squared will equal 4. We take the square root of 4. X is positive or negative 2. Boom. That takes care of 10 and 11. Okay. 12 and 13 says, what is the solution of each equation? Says, leave your answer in radical form. You need to watch this on the test, okay? What form are they asking for? They may not ask for a form, but if they do ask for a form, you need to make sure you leave it in whatever form they're asking, okay? The thing with leaving it in radical form, I probably wouldn't try graphing, because graphing might not give it to you in radical form. It might, but it might not. So let's see here. 12 and 13, I'm actually just going to work them just like I did 10 and 11. I'm just not going to worry about getting a decimal if I need one. So we're going to divide by 5. For number 12, that'll be x squared equals 3. Take the square root of 3, and that is my answer. X equals plus or minus the square root of 3. That is simplest radical form. Okay? You don't have to put it in your calculator because it wants it in radical form. 13, we're going to divide both sides by 98. That will be x squared equals, let's see here, 18 divided by 98. I bet that reduces, let's see what that reduces to. That reduces to 9 over 49. And when you take the square root of that, you get x is plus or minus 3 over 7. So I don't have to write a radical for this one because both of the radicals go away. They are both perfect squares. So easy peasy on 12 and 13 and 10 and 11. Those four are pretty easy. Okay. 14 and 15. Solve the equation by completing the square. Okay, so this is they're telling me what to use, completing the square. I don't have an option, okay? It also says to round my answer to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So these are the ones that are a little long, but I don't have any choice. I have to do them. Luckily, they're set up for us, okay? So I'm going to rewrite this and leave my little blank, okay? Plus blank equals 10 plus blank. All right, whatever you add to one side, you have to add to the other side. So to complete the square, we take b. b in this case is 3, and you divide it by 2, and then you square that. So 3 over 2 squared is 9 over 4. That is what we're going to add to both sides, 9 over 4. Okay, that will be x, and it's whatever you got when you divided the b by 2. So x plus 3 over 2 squared equals 10 plus 9 over 4. 10 plus 9 over 4 is 12.25, but we want the fraction of that, which would be 49 divided by 4. Okay, 49 over 4. Then we want to get rid of the square, so we take the square root of both sides. That'll leave x plus 3 over 2 equals plus or minus 7 over 2, and we subtract 3 over 2 from both sides. Those cancel. We get positive 7 over 2 minus 3 over 2 is 4 over 2, which equals 2. And then we also get negative 7 over 2 minus 3 over 2 is negative 10 over 2, which is negative 5. So we get x equals 2 and x equals negative 5. And if you want to graph it and double check it, you can, but the directions do say work it using completing the square. So we need to make sure we do that, okay? 15, like I said, I don't have much room to work it over here, so I have some over here, room here, I'm going to work it. I'm going to rewrite it, plus blank. And then whatever we add on one side, we got to add on the other. So here we're going to say 5 over 2, and then we're going to square that. So 5 over 2 squared is 25 over 4. That's what we add to both sides. 25 over 4. That is how you complete the square. We just completed the square. Okay? So then we're going to say, all right, that's going to be x. Whatever we got when we divided b by 2 was what goes in the parentheses. So we got a positive 5 over 2 squared equals 9 plus 25 over 4. Stick that in my calculator. You get 15.25. I want the fraction, so I hit math, enter, enter. I get 61 over 4. I take the square root of that to get rid of the square. So I have x plus 5 over 2 equals plus or minus. The square root of 61 doesn't have it's not a perfect square, so we just leave it as square root of 61. But the square root of 4 is 2. And then we subtract our 5 over 2 from both sides. X will equal. All right, now here is where we have to plug it in. Okay, so we're going to do negative 5 plus the square root of 61 over 2. And we're also going to do negative 5 minus the square root of 61 over 2. Now, had it said leave it in radical form, we would be finished right now, but it doesn't say that. So I'm going to go to my calculator and type in negative 5 plus the square root. Let me try this again. Negative 5 plus the square root of 61. Now, watch what I do here. I hit enter, and then I divide that by 2. Okay? I'm dividing, it was by 2, right? Let me make sure. Yes, dividing it by 2. So, divided by 2. If you don't, you will get the wrong answer. Okay? Now, another way you could write it is using parentheses. Parentheses, negative 5 plus the square root of 61. Close your parentheses, divided by 2. That will give you the right answer as well. So, 1.405, I think it said to round our answers to the nearest hundredth. So 1.05 would just be 1.05. Let me double check that. Yes, 1.405, excuse me. So it's 1.41 should be my answer. Had that way off. Okay, so 1.41. All right, and then on our calculator, we can hit second enter, and it brings up the same problem. And basically, you just need to change that plus sign to a minus and hit enter again, and you get negative 6.41. Negative 6.41. Those are your two answers. 1.41, negative 6.41. Okay? 16 and 17, we are still completing the square, but this time it says leave your answer in radical form. So believe it or not, this is actually quicker than rounding. Okay? So For 16, it is not set up to do completing the square, so I'm going to move that 20 over, subtract 20 from both sides. So we're going to have x squared, let me zoom in on this so I have a little more room. There we go. X squared plus 10x plus blank, I'm going to leave that for my completing the square part, equals negative 20 plus blank. Alright, we got 10. 10 is my b, so I'm going to do b divided by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. And then we square that. 5 squared is 25. So I'm going to add 25 to both sides. And this will be x. Remember, it's what you get when you divide it by 2. So the 5 is what goes in the parentheses, equals negative 20 plus 5 is 5. I take the square root of both of those, end up with x plus 5 equals, plus or minus, I just leave it as the square root of 5, and then I subtract 5 from both sides, and I have my answer. So negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 5. I get to leave it like that. That's the leaving it in radical form. Okay? 17. Ugh, 17 is the ugliest problem on the test. Sorry, I would not choose to do this when completing the square, but it tells me that I'm supposed to. So 5x squared minus 3x, I'm going to leave my space, equals negative, or was it? No, positive 11, excuse me. Now, hopefully you remember that you can't complete the square unless a is 1. So my first step is to divide everything by 5. Okay? That will make a 1. It'll be x squared minus 3/5 x plus blank equals 11 over 5 plus blank. Alright, now this is a very ugly b. I'm taking the new b, not the original, the b. Okay? b is negative 3 over 5. I'm going to divide that by 2. That is negative 3 over 10. And then I square that. Negative 3 over 10 squared is positive 9 over 100. So that's what I'm adding to both sides. 9 over 100. Like I said, I would not choose to do this when completing the square if I had a choice. Alright, so we factor this side. It's going to be x, and remember, it's whatever we got when we divided the b by 2. So b divided by 2 was minus 3 over 10 equals, the right side I just stick in my calculator, so 11 fifths plus 9 hundredths. You get 2.29, but you want the fraction, so you hit math, enter in your calculator. You get 229 over 100. And then we take the square root of both sides. X minus 3/10 equals, plus or minus the square root. 229 is not a perfect square, so you just leave it the square root of 229. But the square root of 100 is 10. And then the last step is to add your 3/10 over. So your final answer is x equals 3 over 10 plus or minus the square root of 229 over 10. And again, since we're leaving it in radical form, we get to leave it like that. Okay? All right, 18, word problem. I'm not scared. Don't be scared. They're just word problems. It's all right. So it says a campground consists of 8 square campsites arranged in a line along a beach. The distance from the edge of the campsite to the water at the end of the beach is 7 yards. The area of the campground, including the beach, so that's important, including the beach, is 970 square yards. What is the width of one campsite? So X right here is representing the width of one campsite. So basically, we have to figure out the area, and we're going to do length times width, okay? Area is length times width, and it gave us the area, 970. equals, it gave us the length of the whole thing. See, well, I should say the width of the whole thing. The length here is x and 7 together, so that's x plus 7, so that's the length, x plus 7. But the width is x, but we have 8 of them. Don't forget that. We have 8 squares, so the width is actually 8x because there's 8 of them. Okay, there's an x here, an x here, x here. They just didn't draw the whole picture. They just gave us a snippet, okay? So we are going to work this out now. So we have 970 equals, I distribute, I get 8x squared plus, let's see here, that'd be 56x. I'm going to set it equal to 0, so subtract 970 from both sides. 0 equals 8x squared plus 56x minus 970. At this point, that is big and ugly. It did not tell me how to work that quadratic, so I am going to factor it, okay? Actually, I'm not going to factor it, I'm sorry. I'm going to put in my calculator. So that would be 8x squared, and I'm going to graph it, plus 56x. Actually, I guess I should do it on your calculator that you can see. 8x squared, wrong one, plus, whoa, that's too many pluses, plus 56, whoa. I'm just screwing this all up. Let me just try that again. All right, 8x squared plus 56x. And then what was the last one? Minus 970. So, minus 970. All right, graph. Okay, I can see over here on the right, it is an answer, but I know surely there's another answer somewhere because it is a quadratic. So I'm going to hit zoom. And on 3, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I say I am. Zoom. 3. There it is. Okay. So notice, I have two answers. One's negative, one's positive. Since this is a word problem, there's no way I'm going to have a negative width. Okay, so I don't really have to worry about that one. So I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to figure out what is the positive answer over here. So second trace, I want the 0, which is number 2. I'll move it over to the left. I think I went too far. Okay, so let's see if I can go zoom. Maybe I can see it like this. Second trace, 0. Okay, I can't see it, so let me zoom out again. Couple times actually. There we go. Alright, now let's try it. Zoom trace 0. Alright, so there it is. It's to the left. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to move it to the right and hit enter again, and it tells me my 0 is at 8.05. So that is my width right there. So x equals 8.05, and that was yards. Now, I do have a negative answer, but it doesn't matter because we're talking about a real life problem, and a real life is not going to have a negative width. Okay? 19 and 20, this is just making sure you understand the process of finding the value of c that'll make it a perfect square trinomial. So this is the part where we're taking b, dividing it by 2, and squaring it every time. Okay, so that's what c is going to equal. Okay, so c will be, b in this problem is 12 divided by 2 squared. So that is 6 squared, which equals 36. That is the c that would make that a perfect square. That's all you have to do on those, on 19 and 20. Same thing. B for this one, ooh, it's a little tougher. So we're going to have c equals negative 13 divided by 2 squared. That is going to be 169 over 4. But Okay, you can leave it as a fraction or you can write it as a decimal, but to me the fraction is easier. Okay. 21 says rewrite each equation in vertex form. Name the vertex and interpret and the y-intercept, excuse me. So first off, vertex form. What is vertex form? Vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Okay, we already know the a in both of these. A in both of them is 1. Okay, there's a. We need to find h and k. Now you can do this a couple ways. You can find the vertex using your calculator, or you can do it complete in the square. Okay, we have two problems here. I'm going to do one way of each. Okay, so the first one I'm just going to use my calculator. I'm going to type in y equals x squared plus 8x plus 8, right? Wasn't that what it was? Yep, 8x plus 8. All right, so I hit on my calculator, I hit graph, and I want to know what the minimum is on this. That's your vertex. So second trace, I'm scrolling down to number 3, which is the minimum. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to move my cursor to the left of that minimum. All right, there it comes, left. That's probably left of it. Hit enter. Move it to the right. I don't have to hit enter anymore, but you need to hit enter one more time on your calculator. Okay, so my point right here, it says is -4, -8. So I know right now my vertex is -4, -8, and so now I can write it in vertex form. So y equals, a is 1, so I can leave it blank, or you can put 1 there if you want to. X minus a -4 would be x plus 4 squared plus, or excuse me, minus 8. Boom. That is your vertex form for number 21. Okay. Then it says name the vertex. Well, the vertex I just named, it was -4, -8. And it also says do the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept is if I plugged in 0 here, if I plugged in 0 for that x and for that x, they would both cancel and I would be left with 8. So it's 0, 8. 22, I'm going to work this one out using completing the square, even though the calculator way is much quicker. But I'm just, again, just showing you both ways. So we are going to complete the square here. So I'm going to y equals x squared minus 8x plus 7. So to start, I'm going to move my 7 over. So y minus 7 equals x squared. I didn't leave room to add my part, so hold on a second. Plus blank equals x squared minus 8x plus blank. All right, so we take our b, which is -8, and we divide it by 2. Not -2, just 2. And that will be -4. And then we square -4, which will be 16. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. Over here now will be y, that would be plus 9 equals, on this side we're going to factor, that's x minus 4 squared. And then finally we just move our 9 over. So my final answer is y equals x minus 4 squared minus 9. So that way is doing the completing the square. The other way I just graphed it, and you can find the maximum or minimum and know that's your vertex. So whichever way you like better. My vertex for this one would be the opposite. So it's 4 and then -9. Okay, and my y-intercept would be again 0 and whatever this number is, whatever your c is. Always remember your c is the y-intercept, so 0, 7. So that gets all of those. Okay, very simple. All right, 23 and 24. Oh goodness, this time we're using the quadratic formula for the next 4 looks like, okay? But on 23 and 24, we are rounding our answer to the nearest hundredth. For 25 and 26, we are leaving it in radical form. So, don't forget the quadratic formula. Very, very important. So, I'll write it over here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. It is on your formula sheet, so you don't necessarily have to memorize this one, but it is very good to know for ACT purposes, okay? So basically we're just plugging in a, or x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times b, or excuse me, times c, all over 2 times a. And I'm going to plug in my numbers here. So b is negative 1. It goes there and there. A is positive 1, which goes there and there. And c is negative 12. Now, I really should point out, notice the original problem, I moved my x over. Okay, so that's why it looks like it does. Okay, so I should have said that to begin with. You have to get it equal to 0 before you plug in your a, b, and your c. Okay. From there, we are going to simplify. So again, I do it in stages. That's positive 1 plus and minus the square root of something over 2. And that something, if you put it in your calculator, will get you 49. And that can simplify more. That'll be 1 plus or minus the square root of 7. Or excuse me, not the square root of 7, just 7. The square root of 49 is 7. So 1 plus 7 over 2 and 1 minus 7 over 2. So x equals 1 plus 7 over 2 is 8 over 2, which is 4. And 1 minus 7 over 2 would be negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. So x equals 4 and x equals negative 3. And we definitely could have done that one by graphing or by factoring, but they wanted us to use the quadratic formula. So, sorry, those are the rules. Same thing here. I'm going to move my x over, get it equal to 0, put my x in the middle. So 24's new problem looks like this. See where the x is. And we go from here. Oops. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now I'll plug them in. Again, on this one, b is positive 1, a is also positive 1, and c is negative 7. So I simplify that. That'll be negative 1 plus or minus the square root of something over 2. And the something is, let's see here, what would that be? Square root of 29. 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 7 is 29. Okay, that is again called the discriminant. And if the discriminant is positive, I'm going to get 2 real answers. So my answers, I'm plugging in to my calculator. I'm going to do negative 1. Again, be careful that you plug it in correctly. You need to put parentheses. Negative 1 plus the square root of 29 in parentheses divided by 2. I guess I need to close those parentheses. Sorry. Okay. Divided by 2. And then I also need to do the same thing, but I need to do minus the, oops, 1. Trying to delete, there you go. Negative 1 minus the square root of 29 over 2 is negative 3.9, and the adding is positive 2.9. So x equals 2.19. I think I said that wrong a minute ago. And x equals negative 3.19. So those are my 2 answers, rounded to the nearest 100. Okay. So 25 and 26, I am working these the same way, but I'm leaving the answer differently. So on 25, My answer, like on 24 right here, where I had -1 plus or minus square root of 29 over 2, I would have been done, okay? I would have been finished after I did that. So, but they wanted those rounded. 25 and 26 do not. So 25 is set up like we want it. You already got your A, your B, and your C, and you're just plugging in. So x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Again, it's a long thing, but it's easy once you plug it in. So b is 1, a is -4, and c is 3. So x will be -1 plus or minus the square root of something over -8. So let's see what that something is. 1 squared minus 4 times -4 times 3. You put that in your calculator, you get 49. Hey, 4 square root of 49, that's a perfect square. I can take the square root of that. So -1 plus or minus 7 over -8. So x will be -1 plus 7 over -8, which is, let's see, that'd be positive 6 over -8, which reduces to -3/4. And we have -1 minus 7 over -8. Well, that's -8 over -8, which equals 1. So my answers here are -3/4 and +1 would be my two answers. Okay. 26, if you notice the beginning of it, I need to move that 10 over to the other side, set it equal to 0. So now I have -5x squared minus 7x plus 10 equals 0. And I can put it in my quadratic formula. So -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times b all over 2 times a. Please, please, please don't forget your parentheses. They are important. So here's a, here's b, here's c. Plug it in. So b is -7, a is -5, and c is 10. So that will equal +7 plus or minus the square root of something all over -10. This will be -7 squared minus 4 times -5 times 10. That is 249, and I do not believe that can be reduced. 3 and 83 work, but 83 is a prime number, and so nothing changes. So that is my answer: 7 plus or minus the square root of 249 over -10. That is your answer, left in radical form. Okay. All right, our last two problems. Okay. 27 and 28. You see these things I have here. I've already kind of worked it out a little bit. But it's not total. It's not complete. Let me show you how I got to these. Okay, so I am a big fan of just doing elimination. So to do elimination, you get rid of the y. So I always try to make my x squared positive. So the x squared on the top one is already positive. So I'm going to change the signs of the bottom numbers, and I add them up. Okay, when I add them up, I get 0 equals x squared, and then you have 3x minus x is positive 2x, -1 minus 2 is -3. So that's where this comes from. Okay, and then from this point, you can graph, you can factor, or you can use quadratic formula. You can do a whole bunch of things. You can complete the square if you're nuts and want to do that. Be my guest. I'm going to factor because it is the quickest and easiest. Two numbers that multiply to be -3 and add up to 2 would be +3 and -1. So my answers are x equals -3 and x equals +1. However, don't forget on these problems you have a y as well. So I got to plug in these numbers to get y. So y the original y was x plus 2. So when I plug in negative 3 plus 2, I get y equals negative 1. And when I plug in 1 plus 2, I get 3. So one answer is negative 3, negative 1. And the other answer is positive 1 and 3. Those are your two answers to your quadratic system. Now, can you graph those? Absolutely. You can put both of those in the graph and see where their graphs intersect and do it that way if you want to. No big deal. Okay? 28, same thing. I told you I like my x squared. I like my x squared being positive, so I'm going to change the top one. I'm going to make all their signs opposite. So negative, positive, positive, negative. I add them up. That's a bad line. It looked like I took it off. So there we go. Negative y and positive y make 0 equals positive x squared. Positive 4x minus x is positive 3x. Negative 2 and negative 2 make negative 4. So that is where this comes from. And I just moved it over here so I'd have room to work it. So our last problem, again, I'm going to factor because it is usually, if you can factor, the quickest and easiest way of doing it, unless you have to borrow or something. Two numbers that multiply to be negative 4 and add up to 3 would be positive 4 and negative 1. So that means x will be negative 4 and x will equal positive 1. I don't know why I wrote negative there, sorry. Positive 1. And then don't forget to plug them back in. So for this one, y was equal to negative x minus 2, and we just plug those in. So y equals negative, a negative 4 minus 2. That would be positive 4 minus 2 is 2. So negative 4 and 2 is one answer. Y equals negative 1 minus 2 would be negative 3. And so we have 1 and negative 3 is the other answer. So, 28 problems, not too bad. I hope this helped you do your review. If you have any questions, please leave a comment or send me a reminder if you're in class, and I will see you next time. Until then, stay above the line.